Hopefully, we're going live. So, are people here? Hopefully, they are, or just about coming. Anyway, I'm recording it, so we're all right. And let's get back a little bit a minute. And see where we are. Well, hopefully this is it and you're seeing it. I've had a bit of an Einstein week. Oh, before I start, I'm sorry, you can't see me tonight. My camera's gone kaput, the one in the laptop. And so I'm either going to have to get it mended, which I might have to do anyway, or I think what I'm probably going to do is go for what I should have done ages ago and go for a proper freestanding one, something like a Logitech or something that I can really use and really do this kind of stuff properly, instead of a bit half-bakedly with the one in the laptop. Well, the one that is no longer in the laptop. Anyway, so here we go. And I've had, as I said, a week of really getting into Einstein. I've been into Einstein for over 50 years now. As I got into him as a teenager, because A, he looks so fantastic, B, he had a cat who he adored, and C, wow, he's just, wow, he really is a genius, one of the many, well, one of the fairly many. And what he's given us has seriously changed the way we work and live and hopefully feel and think with the world. And it's that feel and think thing that's really important, and something that, well, it is at the moment for me anyway. It's something that Einstein really felt, as you will see. He wasn't just into physics. He wasn't just into E = mc squared. He wasn't really in the least into proving himself, except for the fact of his own satisfaction and with his friends. I've worked with some of the seriously top best scientists sometimes in the world, and only in a very, very small way, because I'm not one, but I've had the occasion to be with them and listen to them and talk with them. And they don't have ego problems, not when they're that good. They don't have anything to prove. And they're perfectly capable of saying, I don't know, that'll be fun. Let's see what we can explore. Or some of the best ones are, hey, that's just proves the textbook's wrong. They'll have to rewrite them now. And seriously, I've heard this, because things change, things grow, things are always changing. We know that in the magic world, in the shaman world, in the world of the awareness, the spirit keeper. And actually, so do all the best scientists as well. So Einstein was a very whole man. He thought of the world as a whole. There's another lovely quote I'm going to use in a minute. But as you also know, one of my things is rewilding. So with regard to rewilding, this Einstein quote is really important. As I'm sure you're all aware, we're the ones who actually created our problems. We're the ones who created climate change. We're the ones who created all the extinctions and are still not doing a good job of slowing them down. Not really. And COP26 or whatever it was a load of hot air, a load of promises that are going to be brushed under the carpet and not going to be kept. It's almost like it's bread and circuses to keep us ordinary people happy. You know, oh, well, they've said they'll do this, so we can all sit back and be hopeful for another year or so. We can't, of course, not if you've got any sense, but it feels like that's what they're saying to us. And we've got to know we created things. Sometimes we get it wrong. We've been getting it wrong quite a lot. Certainly since 1800, we've been doing it exponentially badly. That means time on time on time, but it, you know, sort of 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, 16 times, that kind of thing is that kind of bad. And we've got to stop. But as Einstein says, we can't solve those problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Think about that. Lovely words like the status quo, business as usual, back to normal. No, you can't. All of them are, excuse me, bollocks anyway. The status quo lasts for, you know, a nanosecond or 5 minutes or something. It does not last forever. The status quo of Julius Caesar is nothing like the status quo of you and me. The status quo of Henry VIII is nothing like the status quo of you and me. Things have grown, things have changed. So your life, think of your life 10 years ago. Think how you were, who you were, where you were, what you were doing. How different are you now? You are, aren't you? You don't even think the same way as you did 10 years ago. I mean, even 2 years ago, you were working out how to live with COVID. If to live with COVID, even if you could. You cannot think in the same way as you did before there was COVID. It's just not possible because COVID is there and you are living with it, learning with it. So you're not using the same kind of thinking you were before COVID. We can't solve the problems that we've created with, for instance, enormous plastic waste, with, for instance, enormous carbon emissions, everybody jetting everywhere, including everybody jetting to COP26, of course. Nobody thought of that one. Carbon saving, really. Everybody driving cars, you know, usual family, mum, dad, 2 kids, and they've got to be teenagers, so you've got 4 cars in your family. And a hell of a lot of people have. And for them, they sort of feel it's normal. And to think how to manage if you didn't have 4 cars, you know, 1 each, it's like, oh, I can't work that one out because my thinking hasn't moved. My thinking moved into, I need a car for myself. My husband needs a car for himself. My son needs a car for himself. My daughter needs a car for herself. And you didn't actually think, well, take the you very loosely, because you probably did, and if you're listening with me, but a lot of people didn't. That's normal. One of my friends, Jenny Roquette in Shrewsbury, is doing the Shropshire Good Food Partnership. And one of the big things they're working on is the fact that 30% of all the food we buy in shops and supermarkets, particularly the supermarkets, we throw away every week. So that's 30% of the agricultural production that we've bought, and all the processing and everything else that went into it and getting it to the supermarket. 30% of that is total and utter waste. Excuse me, I'm going to have to deal with my nose. I suffer from a thing called Sjögren's, which is dry eyes, dry nose, dry mouth. So you actually can't see this, thank the gods. I actually need to water my nose, because if I don't, I could end up very ill. Now, just a minute, I'm going to open the window too. It's not as cold. Back in a minute. Don't run away. Okay, so there we are with all of this waste that probably many people don't even realize is happening. And that's part of this thinking that, oh, well, it'll be all right because COVID will be over and then we'll be back to normal. We'll never be back to normal. Partly because COVID or no COVID, you can't be the same as you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even yesterday. Our thinking has to move on. We have to change our thinking because we can't solve these problems of rewilding, of extinctions, of climate change with the kind of thinking we were using when we created them. Even if it was all unknowing, we were still thinking in a particular way. And we can't do that anymore. So let's move on to a different one and see what we've got here, because we need to go into a completely different place. And let's go for this one, because this is an extension from where we were just then. And it takes us into a place where it's like, really, we actually can't do that. So let's have a look. It is Einstein again. It really is insane doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And in some ways, we're doing this. Plastic is still being thrown away. People are still jetting to COVID. People still have 4 cars when they really only need 1 or possibly 2. People are still buying a new phone every time one comes out. People are still buying a new car. People are still throwing away a sofa because they're bored with it, so they buy a new one. And back to the old thinking again, part of this, I mean, it's called consumerism. Let's use a big word. Part of this is about consuming things, and instead of making things that people actually need, selling those and mending them, as we used to do, certainly before 1800, and actually quite a lot even before the Second World War. We now have a consumer-driven economy. So you have to buy a new phone, otherwise the economy will fall apart. You have to do tons of Christmas shopping, otherwise the economy will fall apart. You have to have a new sofa, even when the old one's perfectly okay, because otherwise the economy will fall apart. And in that sense, yes, it does. For me, frankly, if it's that bad an economy and that, you know, built on sands that are continuously disappearing, then surely we ought to get rid of it. Which is going to take me to another one where I want to be. So let's try this and see where we are. Yeah. You see, I would like to be here. They call it a circular economy. It used to have a different name, excuse me, a while ago, but it was about a self-sufficient economy that didn't waste anything and didn't, you know, keep on growing. Now we're told we need a growth economy. And not really sure why, unless it's to put money in somebody else's pocket. What we need is this. So we have, let's sort of find a place to start. We've got consumption. So we've got a fridge. Okay, I've got a fridge. You've probably got a fridge. We've all got a fridge. At some point, that fridge really does actually fall apart. If you buy a good one, and I've got one that is 21 years old and it's still going strong, but at some point it will be like, can't mend it anymore, or, you know, it's no good anymore. We can't deal with it. It can't be mended. So what we need to do with it then is not chuck it onto a waste heap, chuck it into some skip. We need to be able to send it to someone who can reuse, repair, or recycle. Well, we've said it may not be able to be repaired anymore. So can all its bits be recycled? The metal, you know, the electrical wires, and the fridges have circuit boards, but whatever they have. Yes, it can. All of that can be recycled. It can be turned into materials in this recycling sector, so we can send it to the recycling place, and then the recycling place can actually turn it into materials that can be used again, and then they're used to produce something else. Maybe a fridge, it may be a new phone, it may be bits of a car. But those products that were in my old fridge that had to go to be recycled, and when went through the recycling so that it came out as just usable materials again, they can be made into something else. And then that can go into the distribution, and I can get a new fridge, and I can use it and consume it, and so on and so forth. And it goes round and round and round like this. Now, I'm not actually sure that I've got the other one that I want from that. And that seems sensible to me. That whole thing seems like we can do that. But it does go further, actually, all of this stuff. Let's see what we've got here. Here. And go back and stop sharing that and find something else. Because it's important, all of this stuff. So we've got the recycling, and now I'm not going to be able to find this, so I'm going to go into another one, and we will go into, come here, this, no, come here, do it. Right, let's go into this one, because this is closer to where I want to be. And to share screen again. Sorry, I'm making a mess of this. I really will get here. Honestly, I really will. Honestly, you know me, I do get there eventually. So that's where I want to be. Share screen. And this is going to be small, so I'm going to have to shove it up size for you. Because what I was just talking about, isn't that like the life cycle of a plant? This circular economy is like the life cycle of a plant. Here's your plant, and it's consuming stuff from the soil, and it sheds its leaves, and they go back into the soil, and they make new material for it to feed on, and for new plants to feed on. And some bits of it go into flowers and seeds that make new plants. So it's a circular thing again. And then eventually the old plant dies, and all the bits of the old plant get absorbed into the soil again, and they make more new plants, and they come up and they go again. That's really important. It's really, really very important, because we need to know that. We absolutely need to know that. And it takes us to another place with all this stuff. Because if we're having a circular economy, hopefully I've been sharing properly, have I not? And if we have a proper circular economy, as I just said, like this, that is circulating, that is like the life of a plant, something else comes up in that. And it's important. And it's this. It's a rather lovely thing, this. Lessons learned from life. Yep. We own nothing. We actually own nothing. Everything that surrounds us is temporary. And only the love in our hearts will last forever. And that changes too. But we own actually nothing. When you own a house, say, or you've bought a house, you are guardian to that house for the time that you're there. And when you stop being there anymore, then you go with another house and you leave this house and it stops being yours and someone else is guardian to it. Well, part of the circular economy thing, which I think is very, very good, is that we don't actually own the fridge. We don't actually own the car, and a lot of people actually don't. We don't own anything. We lease it. So there is a monetary exchange that helps everybody, because monetary exchanges are actually helpful as long as they're exchanges and not mad profiteering things. But it's not ours, and it goes back into the company. And part of the thing with the circular economy is that the company who made your fridge, AG or Bosch or whoever it was, they take it back when it needs to be recycled. They organize the recycling of it and they provide you with a new fridge or car or table. It already happens in a sense, but not a very good sense, with renting houses. But then again, why should we own them? And why should anybody own them? They're a valuable asset because everybody needs shelter and warmth and somewhere to live. But we can lease them. And so in a sense, we all own them. I like that idea. Quite possibly, many of you do. But of course, I'm sure you can see that there is a huge stumbling block in it, which is why it hasn't happened. The lovely little film that I put up on Facebook when I was advertising that I'm going to be live tonight, that little film is 10 years old. That's 10 wasted years that has not been done, that has been buried, that has been hidden. Why? Why has it been hidden? Because there are people who need to own things because of their own way of being, issues, greed if you want, whatever. And they can't bear the thought that something isn't mine. I've got to hang on to it. I've got to hold on to it. I've got to hold on to everything that I've bought. And then there's a thing that I can leave it to my children. Half the time that doesn't work, as anybody who's sort of been left things or not left things and been through that situation, it always ends up being a sort of unpleasant kind of situation, inheritance. There are winners and losers. Why do there need to be winners and losers? I think that's really important to know. Because why does anybody need to have more stuff than anybody else? Because it makes you feel eager, because you feel you've climbed the greasy pole or the ladder or whatever you call it. Therefore, I've got more than you. I've got 3 cars and a bigger house. Do you need the bigger house? Do you need the 3 cars? But it makes the ego feel good. And it's also part of the problem of climate change, of massive pollution, carbon, plastic, everything else that we pollute with, chemicals in farming. It's all part of this same thing. And it's also all part of an old, out-of-date form of thinking that we need to own things, that owning things is good, that the more you own, the better sort of person you are. And there are several cultures, as I'm sure you know, around the world, somewhat including ours here in Britain, indeed, quite a lot of it, which think better of you. You know, if you've got a bigger car or more cars or bigger house or more houses or go on holiday 4 times a year or whatever the status symbol is, the status symbol, yeah? Status is important to people. Why? Does it really matter? Does it? Does status matter? Do you respect somebody because they've got 3 cars? Personally, I don't. Probably despise them a bit, but that's me. But I respect, I mean, as my friend Will Lord, who you've heard me talk of, he's an absolutely brilliant flint knapper. He knows lots and lots about making fire. He knows how to make bows. He can make Iron Age swords and roundhouses and shelters, all this kind of thing. I can't do that. I really respect him for doing it. He actually can't write stories. I can. And he respects me for writing stories. But he doesn't respect me for the clothes that I'm wearing or the amount of jewelry or the amount of cars I've got. In fact, knowing Will, he'd probably go or something like that. The whole thought of it. There's this thinking that's out of date again. The old thinking that has created the problems. Why do you revere somebody? Why do you care about somebody? Because of the amount of stuff they've got, property, money, things, whether they've got 4 diamond necklaces or whatever. Why do people think more of them? Let's take that even further. There are people who are called Lord somebody or the Earl of whatnot or the Queen of England or Prince so-and-so. Why do you respect them? Why do you bow and scrape to them? Just to be my usual rude self, my dad, who was another anarchist as well, used to say, when they're all sat on the toilet with their knickers around their ankles, they all look just the same. Queen, Prince, Duke, Duchess, whoever, and me. We all look the same. We've got to thinking it's rather funny looking at people with their knickers around their ankles or sitting on the toilet, and maybe it is, I don't know, maybe that's childish humor. But the point is, they all do it. We all do it. We are all, in that sense, the same. We all have different attributes, all of which are valuable. Mother Nature likes them all. It's just that we think, oh, he's just a dustman. Ooh. And then they go, oh, she's a famous writer. She's got loads and loads of books published. Oh, really? I can't do the dustman's job. Wouldn't even start. Make a total cock up of it. So I really value him. Do you see what I'm saying? There is a thinking, and it pervades certainly Western countries, and I think more and more of the world now has been inculcated with this, probably half subliminally, that the more stuff you've got, the more matter, the more bits and pieces, jewelry, cars, houses, property, clothes, husbands even, or lovers or wives, I suppose, if you're into that kind of thing. The more of something you've got, the more important you are. And that is bollocks. quite often, if you actually go and look at them, the people who've got lots and lots of everything are actually quite a lot less important very often than people who have much less. If they have stuff and they are really using it and they're working for it, then that is important. And then they are, in that sense, useful to Mother Earth, useful to the rest of us, humans, useful to all the other creatures with whom we share Earth with. And that's what's important, people. And that's what we need to be looking at, instead of looking at all of this stuff that depends upon old thinking and meaningless thinking that is just about ego and kudos. I'm going to share again with you. I can get to it. There it is. I love this one. I said to you at the beginning, Einstein is a very whole person, a person who thought in terms of universes as well as worlds and galaxies and that kind of thing, even solar systems. And I'll read it to you. He says, a human being is part of a whole called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest of a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. And that delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires, to affection for a few persons nearest us. As Jennifer Cruz says, our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures as the whole of nature and its beauty. And she's quoting Einstein again there. This is what I was talking about, what happens from this thinking that has created the problems and carrying on using it. We think of ourselves, as he says, our thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest. That I'm separate from you. I am in some ways, but I'm also not. And it is a kind of optical delusion of consciousness, if I think that way. And that delusion is a prison for me, if I think that way, because I can't feel for you. I can't think for you. I can't modify myself for you. And I may not have affection for you. Now let's turn that around. If everyone is thinking like that, and a lot of the near 8 billion of us do think like this, they are restricting themselves so to their own personal desires and the affection for a few persons who are nearest to them. And I'm not one of those. I have been excluded. You are not one of those. You have been excluded. So we all go around excluding each other. Take it even further. I share my house with a cat, as I'm sure you all know. I also share my garden and my home with lots of wildlife, and we do have bats in our attic, which is absolutely amazing and of course, you know, quite special. Swifts come and roost in the eaves, and swallows and house martins. I've been following a jay who comes to the garden to feed. We have foxes come through the garden, and badgers, and little beasts like wood mice and voles, and stoats and weasels. And I share my garden and my home with all of them. They're part of the people, yes, I'll say it, the people who I feel a great deal of affection for, and I care about them. I share it with my plants, as you know, I'm a gardener, and I'm careful with my plants. I don't force them to be where they don't want to be. I take them into account. They are part of my world, my universe. This is where we all need to be. We need to free ourselves from this prison of separateness. And we need to widen our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures, plants, animals, and the tiny little beasts, even viruses. Yeah. We need to embrace everything in our affection, from the tiniest single cell animals to the hugest animals and plants in the whole of our earth. And when we've got that far, let's spread it out. Let's go here. Let's go to somewhere like this, a fantastic galaxy. And all of that I can feel affection for. I don't understand it. I don't know it. Bits of it, I'm sure, would scare me shitless, as I would say. But I can still have affection for it. I can still care about it. I can still want it to be in the best way that it can for itself. I don't want to constrict it for me. So that's really where I am at the moment. I'm going to read Einstein's quote again. Now, let me say something else. He uses he. Remember when he was living? Everybody used he then. Don't get in a gender shit because he's not using the sort of gender pronouns you want to use. This is Einstein. This is not you. He doesn't live in the same century even as you. So let's read him for what he's saying. If he was now, I'm sure he would be using different pronouns, but he's not now. He's moved on. He's out there in the universe. Hopefully still transmitting back to us. Anyway, a human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. And this delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires, to affection for a few persons nearest to us. And our task, all of us, our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So that's me for this week, apart from a little thing, which I will go to now. And one more little share. Let's go and share again. Let's get there. I'm, as you know, rewilding our hearts is something. And what I've just been saying is a part of that, although that's not something we go into on this webinar. That's why I was able to do it today. 6th of February, 7 to 9 p.m. I'm doing an introductory webinar on rewilding our hearts, getting you started to be a part of the solution. And there's still some places, so I would love it if you came. And I would love to see you there to work with you that evening. It's interactive. loads of discussion, breakout rooms, so you work in small groups as well as in a big group, lots of questions and lots of time for you to put questions too. So I would love to see you there on the 6th of February. We'll expand on all of this, on encompassing everything in our consciousness, and so being able to really rewild our hearts. And when we rewild our hearts, then we know how to work so that we can do our own bit for rewilding our Mother Earth. So I'm off for now, and I shall look forward to seeing you next Monday. Don't know what I'm talking about. We'll find out on the way. And hopefully seeing at least some of you on the 6th of February. So take care, everybody. It's been great being with you, and see you next week. Bye for now.